Well, when you look at the alliance of political power mobilised against Trump, the financial power of outfits like Google, Facebook and Twitter, who refuse to publish legitimate stories about Biden, and I can assure you these stories won't go away, but media power, social media, mainstream media, the cultural power in Hollywood, all were anti-Trump. As Greg Sheridan wrote over the weekend, quote, big tech, social media and almost all mainstream media were all in for Biden. Social media, he said, crossed a dangerous Rubicon when it started censoring Trump and mainstream newspapers and conservatives if they weren't backing Biden, unquote. Wrote Greg Sheridan, quote, this is the most sinister, anti-democratic and genuinely disturbing development of this election. Well, if the determination to beat Trump was so overwhelming, what tactic wouldn't they stop at? As Greg Jones of Cogra wrote at the weekend, quote, in Wisconsin, won by Joe Biden, the 60-year average voter turnout, 60 years, is 67%. This year it was reportedly 89%, a 5.5 standard deviation from the historical average. We might expect this, he said, in Turkey or Zimbabwe, but not in America. And it's unsurprising that Donald Trump's camp, he says, is unsettled. Well, Donald Trump is being hammered for saying, and I quote, if you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us. And he also said, quote, these really phony fake polls were designed to keep our voters at home. Our numbers started miraculously getting whittled away in secrecy, unquote. Well, this is the business about mail-in ballots. Almost 100 million Americans voted before the day. Of those who walked to the ballot box on the day, the overwhelming majority backed Trump. The reported turnout was 67% of eligible voters, the highest in a century. Trump won Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona and Georgia in 2016. These were the seats, you'll recall, when they stopped counting on the night of the election, and no one could explain why they stopped. Trump was a mile in front. Pennsylvania, 57% of the vote. Georgia, 52%. Michigan, 54%. Wisconsin, 54%. I went off air on Wednesday night. Trump was leading in Wisconsin 54-46. Suddenly, 100,000 votes lobbed in Biden's lap. None for Trump. Trump was leading 54-43 in Michigan. But thousands and thousands of votes materialised overnight for Biden. In last Wednesday night's program, I went into detail about ballot harvesting in Minneapolis by Democrat workers paying Somali immigrants and people in aged care for their ballots. And the ballot harvester was saying, quote, I have 300 ballots in my car right now. Numbers don't lie. You can see my car's full. All these here are absentee ballots. A Minneapolis taxi driver was secretly recorded saying, we showed you this last week, I was given money so I could vote, $800. Well, of course, the left denies there's a problem. But the Heritage Foundation has documented instances in the past 4 years of voter fraud, false voter registrations, duplicate voting, fraudulent absentee ballots, vote buying, intimidation of voters, ineligible voting by foreigners, and altering the vote count. Donald Trump has filed lawsuits in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. One of the challenges involves whether a postal ballot should be counted when it's postmarked after the election day. Now, certainly ballots in the mail are accepted until November 10, which is a week after the election, so long as they are postmarked by election day. Have a look at this. Project Veritas is a group which I talked about last week when I spoke to the former chief of staff of Donald Trump. It uses undercover technology to reveal corruption and bias. I gave you detail last Thursday night of what was happening in relation to the buying of votes in Minnesota, which Biden won with 10 electoral college votes. Project Veritas was told by a former political worker that before Minnesota's Democratic primary on August 8, ballot harvesters, quote, took every single ballot, unquote, from elderly people in a Minneapolis public housing complex. Well, have a look at this from Project Veritas.
Tell us where you work.
I work in the Traverse City Post Office, more specifically the Barlow branch.
Your boss told you and your colleagues something that shocked you this morning. What was it?
We were issued a directive this morning to collect any ballots we find in mailboxes, collection boxes, just outgoing mail in general, separate them at the end of the day so that they could hand stamp them with the previous day's date. Today is November 4th, for clarification.
Who is your boss, and what is his title?
Jonathan would be a direct supervisor, yes. As of right now, he is the opening supervisor for the Barlow branch post office. So and this is anecdotal, Carrier down in another office said they watched the postmaster doing it. If it were just a typical day, it would be clerks doing it up at the distribution center.
So 8 p.m. election day, November 3rd, the Court of Appeals ruled ballots have to be received by that time. And what were you told?
To separate them today so they could mark them with yesterday's date and send them through the express system to wherever they needed to go.
This appears to be an attempt to circumvent Michigan law and allow late votes. And you said there was a hamper where letter carriers were supposed to leave their ballots. Where are the ballots now?
They were putting them into express bags to go to the distribution center. In regards to a hamper, there was a standard hamper that all letter mail is supposed to go to, and they had a tub next to it that we were supposed to put any ballots collected today into.
Yes. What made you come forward?
That's sketchy. I don't like sketchy. It screams corruption. Also, knowing the post office's leanings politically, it didn't seem quite right.
We'll have to reach out to Jonathan Clark for comment. Hey, is this Jonathan?
Yes.
Hey, I'm a reporter with Project Veritas, James O'Keefe here, and I have information that you guys have been stamping ballots with the previous date, November 3rd. He just hung up the phone on me. He just hung up the phone on me.
Well, there you are. Making sure the ballot is postmarked by election day. Now, one of the Trump team have gone to court to challenge the fact that their scrutineers were not allowed near where the votes were being counted. Quite frankly, American elections are virtually the amateur hour of politics. There are more than 10,000 different entities responsible for the administration of the presidential campaign. It's open slather. Here, federal elections are conducted by an independent national entity, the Australian Electoral Commission, and even then we've got concerns. Well, so too does Cory Bernardi, the former senator and former member of the Liberal Party, who knows the American political scene, having studied it in America for many months. He joins me. Cory, good evening to you. Thank you for your time. What are we to make of all of this?
Well, Alan, we should be desperately concerned because there's a lot riding on it. And what worries me the most is the normally sensitive, sensible, conservative commentators who have been bullied by the media into saying, no, Trump should concede. There's no evidence that there is any fraud or systemic problem. And you've demonstrated some of it there, but I can tell you in Michigan, there's documented that there are 10,000 dead people who have voted. Now, I don't know how many of those votes were actually counted, but 10,000 dead people voted. And I can tell you now that's impossible, but they did. And so there's a question to be asked there. We know the counting machines, the voting machines which are in Michigan and used in 30 other states, suddenly switched, one of them switched from Biden votes, Trump votes to Biden votes, and that changed the outcome in that particular area. There are so many questions here that the only way to follow them through is to follow due process, which is what is mandated under the Constitution. You can go to court. The election is not decided until the 14th of December when the Electoral College meets. And those people who have said Trump should concede, those people who have said there is no evidence of any fraud or collusion or any problem with this election at all are just mind-numbing. They've suspended any rational thought is how the only way I can say it, Alan.
Let our viewers, Cory, have a look at this tweet. Cory tweeted this to me today, and have a look at these people on the tweet. One of them, you'll see, one of them's born, what, in 1850?
Yeah, happy 170th birthday to Lemoyne, I think his middle name is. Yes. Alan, they were seven people that were all over 100 years of age. 5 of them actually returned ballots into that thing. Now, I don't know how many of them were disqualified, but the simple fact is that dead people are being recorded as voting. And everyone says there's nothing wrong here. We know Pennsylvania, we know Illinois have a rabid history of voter fraud. And it was only earlier this year, actually, I think the president of the Senate in Pennsylvania was actually imprisoned. We've had judges that have been taking money to ballot stuff. We know the counting machine issues are there. We know there are software programs which the US intelligence agencies have been using internationally. We don't know whether they've been used domestically. But there are so many questions. And anyone that says Donald Trump is not within his rights to go through this process, present the evidence to the court and have the courts make a decision is not a serious constitutionalist.
I agree with you. I agree. Sorry?
I was going to say, I heard today someone say about how good George W. Bush was coming out and praising. But you go back, George W. Bush pushed and pushed and pushed for 37 days to get Al Gore out of the system. Al Gore conceded, but if he hadn't conceded and had done a statewide recount in Florida, Al Gore would have been president of the United States.
So where do you think this is going?
There is a lot going for this.
Yeah, where do you think it's going? Where do you think it's going to finish up, Corey? You know the scene.
Well, it's absolutely got to go to the Supreme Court. I think there are still live and active races, irrespective of the court outcomes. In some of them, I think they've called them far too early. But ultimately, I think the next president is going to be decided by the rulings of the US Supreme Court.
Good on you. Good to talk to you, Corey, and thank you for your time. There he is, a highly intelligent and very informed person, a very objective analysis, Corey Bernardi.